Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the breaking news that the UK government are going to delay the incoming standards controls again. At this point, businesses will have absolutely no faith in this Tory government. They keep saying a new system is coming online, and then after businesses have tried to prepare for it, they then turn around and say, JK lol, maybe next year. Businesses have had it now. It's impossible for this government to ever be taken seriously again. May we have a new one, please? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So before I get started, I just want to go back to the last time these standards controls were supposed to come online. The Cold Chain Federation organised, I don't know what you'd call it, like a sort of a stream where they were going to do a Q&A with some expert. They had various experts in logistics, trade and so on to answer questions about the upcoming standards controls. This was ages ago, right? The last time they were supposed to be coming online. And I sneaked in. It wasn't anything untoward. There was no checks. There was no questions I had to answer. I didn't pretend to be someone I wasn't, but I was in there. And I asked a question. Do you think the standards controls will be coming online this time? I said, do you think that, or will the government just announce a delay again? And the answer I got from the experts was, no, I think they'll go ahead with it because they will just look ridiculous if they don't. Now, this was the last time they delayed it. And I wasn't convinced, but, you know, the thinking was, from the particular expert who answered my question, I can't remember who it was, I'm afraid, the thinking was that it will be so damaging for the reputation of the government to delay it again that is the reason they'll have to go ahead with it. Well, not only did they delay it again, this was when Jacob Rees-Mogg said, actually, we're going to delay it indefinitely. So this was like, yeah, we're not actually going to bother. I can't actually work out a way to do it, so we'll just not bother. This was an arch Brexiteer. So now we go ahead and we're supposed to be getting these standards controls in at the end of this October, right? Yeah, no. I mean, I've talked recently about these upcoming standards controls. The fact that according to the EU, the Tory government hadn't actually showed them their plans for it yet. I said that this week. Was it even yesterday? I can't remember. It was this week. And I thought, well, that's a bit careless because they need the EU's help to implement those plans. The initial checks will be taking place on their side of the border. And I wondered, I said in the video, didn't I? I wondered whether this was because we did have a plan, but for some bizarre reason, we just weren't showing it to the EU Commission. How does that make sense? Or is it that we just don't have a plan? I sort of suspected the answer, and now we know. There is no plan. The government published something which looked like the skeleton of a plan, but it seems there was no actual detailed plan behind it. Nothing to make it work. The government had been panicking in recent weeks. We sort of got the impression things weren't going well. They'd even pissed off the EU Commission by trying to deal with the issues with individual member states. And there were little phrases. I pointed this out as well. Like the UK government were asking these other countries, what's your plan for this? And I said at the time, what do you mean? They should have written back going, what do you mean, what's our plan? What's your plan? These are your standards controls. Again, we keep asking the EU to solve our problems for us. But this was all pointless anyway. The Commission, the EU Commission, have to coordinate things on the EU side. I said that this showed even after 7 years, the Tories still had no fundamental idea about how the single market works. Not even on a basic level. Extra baffling when you consider it's the Conservative Party who were instrumental in setting it up. And now we're told that ministers are going to announce a delay to the initial phase of the standards controls on imports from the EU. Again. Supposed to kick in from the end of this October, just in time to knacker Christmas trade. I also said, when the date was first announced, this seems suboptimal. If you're going to bring in a new layer of trade friction, why would you do it when trade's at its highest? Why not in January, when there's way less freight? Would give you a chance to iron out any problems. Oh, there'll be problems. According to the FT report, there's an implication that this is what they're going to do now, but we'll see. Who knows? At this point, will anyone even be listening to what ministers say? They'll come out and say, oh, we're going to delay it, not happen at the end of this October. We might do it next January. Will you really? Okay. The Financial Times say that the government have told them that while the final details of the border plan will be published very soon, the implementation will be pushed back. In other words, an admission that 3 months ahead of the intended implementation date, they did not actually have a plan finalised. After all, it would have been published otherwise, wouldn't it? Has to be published. Just can't get over how amateurish these boneheads are. They haven't got even the first clue about project management. There are 16-year-olds learning about project management on their BTEC engineering course. I know, I've taught them. They know more than these clowns. I mean, think about the process. When the system is implemented, so let's work backwards. The system's implemented, right? Everyone needs to know how it works. That means your border officials need to be trained in how it works. But also, if you want to cut out problems, the hauliers need to know how it works. The exporters need to know how it works. The importers need to know how it works. So the businesses buying and selling, that's every business in Europe and Britain. The people transporting it across that border, as well as those checking everything, they all need to know how it works in detail. That means you need to spend time telling everyone how it works in advance. So you have your plan finalised. Then you need a lot of time to explain to everyone who needs to know how it works. There's an implementation period of several years for a new system in normal countries. You know, a new system comes online. They give you a couple of years to get, this is how it's going to work. Couple of years to get yourselves ready. We were going to try and roll it out when even 3 months before, the government didn't even know what the plan was. That means it was impossible to explain it to everyone how it was going to work. Even the government didn't know. Still don't, according to this report. Hey, Sunak, hey, Braverman, how's your new border controls going to work? Don't know. We haven't quite worked out the details yet. Why is everything with these people a clown car crash every single time? Is there nothing they can actually get right? Like, I'm a strong political opponent of the Tories, right? So I've got no problem picking holes in their policies. But this isn't about policy, because there's implementing what I think is a terrible policy. And then there's this. This is incompetence. This isn't bad policy. It's incompetence on a level surely unheard of in this country. You wouldn't trust these clowns to look after your dogs for the weekend. Why are we letting them run the country? I mean, I've never run a large project before, but even I know you have to let your stakeholders know how a system works before you try to implement it. And in isolation, this would be bad enough. This shit show is quite staggeringly embarrassing for all of us. But it's not an isolated incident, is it? The EU applied their full standards controls the day we left the single market. We should have done the same. We didn't. Why not? We weren't ready. They were ready. They had the same notice we did. Why weren't we ready? Tories gone a Tory. You know, then they were going to come in 6 months later, then a year, then another year, then not at all, then this November. Now we don't know. And this is just standards controls. We had it with everything else as well. There will be no changes to our trade arrangements, all the advantages of memberships, none of the disadvantages. For years, that's what they said. All the experts said, yeah, there'll be changes. The EU said, yeah, there'll be changes. Tories said, no, we hold all the cards, don't you know. Then they said, there might be some changes. Then we left the EU without having prepared anything. I cannot emphasise that enough. We didn't actually do anything. We just left the EU. It was all political up to that point. It was all about the Tories working out a political way to just leave the EU. We hadn't actually prepared to leave the EU. We hadn't got any systems in place. You know, we didn't have anything. And that was because the Tories wanted to hide the huge changes which were coming. So although the EU prepared from the moment we formally told them we were off in 2017, and they'd been thinking about it from 2016, we didn't do anything until 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic, after we'd already left the EU. The first thing we did was dig up Kent, mostly without telling the local Tory and Brexit voting residents, and built a load of lorry parks. Then that was it for a while. That was it. Oh, we've got some lorry parks now, we'll be fine. The government toyed with declaring war on France to get out of dealing with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Then people pointed out that although it wasn't Boris Johnson's worst idea, it was far from ideal. So then he abandoned that, thankfully. Customs controls were also delayed. See, they should have been in place when we left the customs union. They were for the EU. They applied them. We didn't. They were delayed as well, because again, not ready. Even now, although there's a system in place, took a year, but there's a system in place, we don't carry out many actual checks. So we're sort of taking it on trust that what the paperwork says is in the box is what's in the box. So even that hasn't been fully implemented. We're losing many billions due to not applying customs controls properly. At the same time as the government are saying we can't afford public services because money's tight, the government are officially turning a blind eye to smuggling, costing us more than the entire annual budgets of most government departments. We had the same with the UK CA and CE mark policy. They set a date, then they extended it, then they extended it again and again, then they deferred it indefinitely. And consider what this latest delay means for businesses. It's not one delay, it's the latest in a long line of delays on Brexit systems. And think about why they're being delayed. It's not because something happened to slow the process down. This isn't like the EU's ETIAS scheme, which has taken longer than it was going to because COVID hit and then there was suddenly a shortage of microchips. These delays are because the government cannot grapple with the enormity of their hard Brexit. They wait until they just have this blinkered attitude. Oh, it'll sort itself out. Someone will come up with a plan. We'll just go for this date. Then they get up to it. And it's like, we haven't got a plan because you know what? This is bonkers. Then they realise it's not actually going to work. So they delay it again. So you're a business. You're a business who needs to use these systems when they come online. It costs you to get ready for them. It costs you to prepare. Time and money. The government keep announcing them, then keep delaying them. What happens when they announce them again? On the one hand, you can't just ignore them. You can't just go, well, they're probably lying again. Because if it does come in, you've got to be ready or you might lose your business. On the other hand, you've got no confidence it won't be delayed again. And it's costing you time and money to prepare. At this point, how can an affected business have any faith in this government? And remember, only a minority of the affected businesses are even in Britain. Like most of them are not. British businesses are stuck in this nightmare, but EU-based businesses, they can try and change their business model to cut out the British market. They can go, well, look, we're not selling enough to them for all this hassle. Let's just stop. And they might stop early. This clown show can be costing us trade. Not just the necessary trade friction of the unnecessarily hard Brexit, but even businesses who could cope with that if it was competently implemented and still make a profit may not be able to deal with this level of clownery. Businesses in Britain can either move to the EU or put up with it. Businesses in the EU can just decide to not bother to sell to us. This is a dreadful way to run a country. And we've got another year of it. Actually, yesterday, Sunak was hinting about leaving the election till the last possible moment in 2025. Now, although I don't really think they're going to do that, the prospect is fairly terrifying. Like, how much more Brexit damage could they do if we gave them another year and a half? Absolute clowns. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.